Hey. Hey. Some people are beginning to join. Kul. Hej Helena. Hej allihopa. So I'm sat here. I'm going to mix a bit of Swedish and English because I'm not too sure what your level of Swedish is. So just to include everyone, I will use a bit of both. Så, hej alla! Hoppas att ni mår bra. Hoppas att ni har en bra torsdag där ni är. And I'm just sat here and I'm waiting for Daniel, my colleague Daniel, and he's going to join this live. And we're going to talk a little bit about the boot camp, which is starting soon. We are opening for registration tomorrow. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and explain a little bit about what it is, if it's something that you might be interested in. This is our fourth boot camp, vårt fjärde bootcamp, Swedish Verbs Bootcamp. So yeah, this is a popular course that we have. It's really quite popular and very effective. So we are super excited to be running it again. It's super exciting. So yeah, I'm just sat here. If you have any questions about the boot camp or Swedish verbs, for that matter, you could just type them in the comments, and I'll be able to help you. Jag kan hjälpa och svara på era frågor om ni har några. Also, if you have particular questions about the actual boot camp, then type them in the comments as well, and we'll be able to answer them too. So yes, just gonna see if Daniel is joining because he's the one I'm waiting for. Can you guys hear me okay? Should have just checked that. Kan ni höra mig? Ja, okej. Bra, perfekt, tack. Tack så mycket. Använder. Is this from the video that we posted just the other day, or do you have a general question about the verb använder? Because we did just post a video, I believe. I think it was yesterday, about this previous boot camper who finally learned how to remember the verb använda. So that was a particularly tricky one for her. So she'd been studying Swedish for several years, and for some reason she just could not remember the verb använda. But when she'd done the boot camp and she'd been drilling her verbs, including that verb, according to the boot camp sort of philosophy that we have, the boot camp program, the very tough program, she was able to remember it and she didn't have to think twice of it. So I did post a video on that. I don't know if that is what you're referring to or if you had another specific question, but do type in the comments. Så kan jag försöka hjälpa. So yeah, I'm just here waiting for Daniel, and I'll talk a little bit whilst I'm waiting for him to join. So if you don't know us, we are Swedish Made Easy. Swedish Made Easy is our, it's my sort of passion project, I guess. I started teaching svenska, började undervisa svenska 2007. And have taught Swedish ever since, and I've also written the book that you might know, which is called Teach Yourself Complete Swedish. Oh, here's the question. My question is how I apply it as past form. Okay, so the past form of använder is använde. Okay, I think Daniel's just joining in. I'm just going to let Daniel in. A-N-V-Ä-N-D-E. So it would end on an E at the end. Hej Daniel!
Hej!
Hej! Välkommen!
Tack så mycket.
Jag har pratat på lite här under tiden. Mm.
Vad har du pratat om?
Ja, vad har jag pratat om? Jag har sagt att jag väntar på dig.
Mm.
Och jag har sagt att vi ska prata om bootcamp.
Mm.
Och jag har sagt, vad har jag mer sagt? Om någon har frågor så får de gärna skriva i chatten. Och då var det någon som frågade om verbet använda. Och
Klassiker.
Klassiker, precis. Jag sa precis det. Att jag postade en video om det verbet precis för några dagar sedan. Katalina som äntligen lärde sig verbet använda.
Ja, och vi pratade väldigt mycket om det på lektioner och så.
Precis. Så jag har också sagt att jag tänker att vi blandar kanske lite engelska och svenska. To include a bit of both.
Okay, sounds good to me.
Yeah, because I'm thinking if people want to know about the bootcamp and if they are not fluent in Swedish yet, then it might be good to just explain a few things in English. Yeah.
Okay, where do we begin?
Let's begin let's talk about what is the bootcamp. What is our Swedish Verbs Bootcamp? How would you describe it?
How would I describe it? So I would describe it as a 4-meal course.
A 4-meal course, yes.
Yeah. And each week we meet up to see how much we've eaten.
Yes. Although it's 5 meals, actually. It's
5 meals, yeah. So
yes, 5-meal course, yes.
It's a 5-meal course.
That's a good way to explain it.
And I think by the end of it, we're all going to be really, really full. But there's still leftovers if you want to come back for extras.
Yes. That's a nice metaphoric way of describing it.
It's at the top of my head.
Yeah, so the boot camp, it is 5 weeks or 5 meals, 5 weeks, and throughout this 5-week period, which is quite intense, you will learn how to use the 50 most common and useful Swedish verbs in all 5 forms.
Yeah.
And I guess when we talk about the 5 forms, we talk about the imperative, the infinitive, the present tense, the past tense, and the supinum present verb.
Yeah, so all of them.
All of them.
And also how to use them in a sentence.
Yes.
So that is the main thing. So we're not kind of giving out a list of verbs and tell you, remember these. We are putting them into context so you know how to use them in a practical situation in real life.
And that is something that a lot of previous boot campers throughout the years have said is they find it very useful, that particular thing. It's not just, like you say, it's not a list. Just använda, använd, använda, använder, använder, använt. So it's contextualized, which actually brings up some really interesting discussions about that, which we deal with each week at the live Q&A.
Yeah, and that is kind of the point of it. So there's always going to be questions along the way while boot campers are doing the boot camp. And that Q&A session is designed for questioning and kind of discussing around the topic, because there's obviously more to learn about verbs and how to use them.
Exactly, and the nuances, I think, sometimes it's like, I find when we've done the boot camps previously that people have come to the boot camp, and some people who've been there, they actually knew almost all the verbs when they came. So they were maybe like B1 or B2 or something like that, or maybe even higher than that. But they weren't aware of some of the nuances of how we actually use the verbs. They may know one meaning of it, but then some of the example sentences shows a different meaning of it.
Yeah, that's right. So, and that is one of the big tricks to learn, I think, with verbs, when to use which verb. And obviously the form of it is not always going to be easy. It's not always, easy to remember when am I going to use a specific verb. And so there's a lot of plates spinning at the same time, especially in speech, I think.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. But the actual boot camp, the main work, apart from taking part in the live Q&A, which is optional, but we highly recommend it, and it's
definitely
one of the things that people say that they really, really appreciate about the boot camp.
And we do record it as well. So even if you are joining in and things might go over your head during the session, or maybe you forgot what it is you wanted to ask, but then you remember it half an hour too late. It's all being recorded. So you can always go back and you can always check what. Yeah.
And if you can't make a session, then you can always watch it afterwards.
Yeah, you can always send in the email with your questions as well. And then that will be brought up during the Q&A, and you'll have your answer even though you're not there. Yeah,
precis. Exactly. But the main work, if we're going to talk about the gym is Quizlet.
Yeah.
The Verbs Bootcamp gym is Quizlet, and we have designed, there's a part of this program, the main work that you will do is you will work according to a training schedule. So it sort of mimics a personal trainer a little bit. It's a bit like going to the gym, and you have your training sessions Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays and Saturdays.
Yeah.
And from previous boot camps, we know roughly how much time this takes. And we do estimate that you have to spend between 5 and 7 hours a week doing this boot camp.
Yeah.
So it is intense.
It's designed to be intense, just to get yourself really kick-started with it. That's the main idea behind it, I think.
Absolutely. And I think another idea behind it as well is, well, two things. It's working with spaced repetition, and we know that spaced repetition is incredibly powerful when you are learning something and then you want to kind of go from seeing it, remembering it in the moment, and then maybe being able to recall it if you think really hard, and then in the end it becomes automatic, so you don't have to kind of go, what was that thing? What was that?
And also you don't lose the materials after the course either. Like I said, it's still there. You can still have a second helping of it afterwards.
Yes, you can actually. You do get lifetime access to the Quizlet lists or the seminars, and of course we have a lot of downloads, a lot of materials as well. We have verb form guides, we have numerous cheat sheets,
and you get to hear my voice not every single day, but every other day when you listen to the sentences.
Yeah.
So when you think about verbs, you think about my voice.
Yes, you'll have Daniel's voice echoing in your head. Yeah. So yeah, it's incredible. I think if I'm going to be honest, I think when I came up Please be honest. I think when I came up with the idea of the boot camp originally, when I came up with the concept, and then we started to do some work together on like selecting the sentences and trying to design it, I think I initially thought that it was going to be just for beginners. Actually, I thought, oh, this would be perfect for A1, A2 maybe. But it's been so interesting doing the boot camp, and now this is our 4th time when we're doing it. And I find that actually it's best for people who are maybe A2, B1, B2.
Yeah.
A2, it is going to be very intense, but hugely helpful. It will propel you if you're kind of A2 or A2 plus. If you're B1 or B2, what I've found, and I'm sure you've found the same, Daniel, that a lot of people who are intermediate B1, B2, they have bad habits.
Yes.
And they've learned so many things, and it's amazing, and they start to be able to, you know, speak with a degree of fluency. But I also think because Swedish verbs, when we talk about Swedish verbs compared to maybe other languages, people say, oh, Swedish verbs is so easy. So easy. We use the same form for all persons, and it's really simple. And it's like, I wonder sometimes, because I hear so many intermediate learners who make mistakes with the verbs all the time. And they get into bad habits because they are focusing, understandably perhaps, on more difficult things with the Swedish language. So they are thinking about the pronunciation, and they're thinking about the possessive pronouns or possessive reflexive pronouns maybe, or the adjectives and word order and all those things, sin and sitt and sina. And I think because of that, people sometimes kind of forget the verbs. Not forget them completely, but you don't spend as much time on them because they are seen as, oh, but it's easy. But the thing is, if you don't get them right, you know.
It'll make no sense. No,
exactly. And verbs are such a cornerstone. I mean, we talk about staple diet, don't we? Like you have your cornerstones, your staple diet that you have to have in a language. And verbs is like
they're the engine of the sentence.
Yeah.
Just like an engine in a car. Without it, you can't run the car. You can't run a sentence without a verb.
No. Unless you're just doing some interjections. But I do apologize. I do have a moaning dog here. She's very vocal. She's all right. She just wants to be close. She's okay. Yeah. So I think it's interesting because like I said, I feel that verbs are overlooked. That's the word I was looking for. Overlooked.
And I also think when I talk to students about how they learn verbs, in general, when they learn verbs on their own, or if they learn it through, you know, any of these courses that are being taught in Sweden, it's all about learning lists. It's all about learning patterns and kind of doing it very kind of formally. I don't know what the best word for that is, but it's like they don't really learn the language. They just learn a bunch of words in the right order.
Kind of like spring, sprang, sprungit.
Yeah, and then they kind of do that over and over again. But they don't really have an understanding of the verb.
No, and this is the interesting thing, which I've been, every time that we've had the boot camp seminars, or we sometimes call them seminars, the Q&A live element of the boot camp, I've been amazed myself, actually, at, you know, all the nuances, the cultural kind of meanings, and well, if you say it like this, but then if it's like that, then it's something different. And even with just what might be perceived as kind of, you know, the most common verbs or basic verbs, it's so rich and deep. And I think having the space and time to really discuss that and to go deep into that also helps people remember.
Yeah.
It really contextualizes it.
Yeah, because it is quite intense. And it is an experience for everyone involved. It really is, because you kind of place yourself in a sinking ship with a bunch of other people. And then
from all over the world.
Yeah, then you help each other out to kind of keep the water away. And then by the end of it, you might actually reach land. So it is hectic. It is a lot to think about.
It's tough. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely tough. I know in a couple of previous boot camps, even though it's called a boot camp, but people have been a little bit surprised at, oh my gosh, this is quite intense.
Yeah.
It's more intense than they thought.
Yeah.
But when I always say this, stop trying to skip the struggle. You know, if you're gonna if you're gonna get to the next level, you are gonna have to put the hours in. And doing it in an intense way like this, I think can really create a sense of achievement.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, it will be an achievement at the end of it, and everyone will pass it at the end of it. But it is going to be, you know, it's not easy. I mean, learning a new language isn't easy anyway, but this is like tackling it head first. And one of the things this course kind of gives you is the confidence in one huge area of the language to tackle other areas in the language. And that's also one of the benefits of doing something like this. You kind of learn that you can learn.
Yes, exactly. And I think also another thing that people have said after the boot camp is they've said that it helped them to think about their study routines and the structure. Right. So not only will you be learning the verbs and the verbs, the verb forms, all the conjugations and all the cultural nuances and all the things that we've talked about, but you will also explore and experience a really powerful study routine, which people have been inspired by. Actually, they've said like, oh, I'm thinking of how I can apply this to other areas in my life or to other aspects of Swedish. So I think that is also important to mention, because I think that's a little bit unique in this type of course compared to if you do, I don't know, an intensive course at a language school, for example, where you kind of work with, you've started, but the intensity there just means that you're doing it 4 hours a day for so many days a week. It's just a time intensity, but this is more than that. It's not just the time that you spend. But I think also, like you said earlier, I just wanted to comment on that it's quite rare, I think, that you focus on one area in grammar this intensively.
Yeah.
That's quite rare. And I don't know. I mean, I think, of course, a language has to have all the elements, and of course it should, you know, you can't just sit, like we said, you can't just sit and study verb lists.
No.
You have to put it into context, and you have to learn the different pieces together. But having said that, sometimes it can be really liberating and empowering to just drill into one area and get that area sorted. Something nice about that too.
And the thing how I think about languages as well is that everything is connected in a grid, right? So like a spider's web, and you open yourself up to learning other things connected to that kind of node. where you have the verbs. So you basically open doors for yourself to understand and learn other areas, maybe even quicker, because you've tackled this difficult area first. Because there will be things in B1 and B2 as well, of course, where you kind of need to have a really decent understanding of verbs in order to progress.
Yes.
So it's not just that you learn the verbs in themselves. It's not just that you get confidence and all those things. It's also that you kind of give yourself the opportunity to learn a lot of other things at the same time when they arise.
Yeah, I'm thinking that it kind of frees up mental capacity is maybe not the right word. Mental energy, maybe, or mental space.
Headspace.
Headspace. That's right. You free that up if you don't have to, or if you have some verbs that you maybe learnt early on, but you're always just a little bit unsure. Oh, do they end in AR or ER in present tense? I'm not entirely sure. I'm guessing. You're kind of winging it. A lot of people do that, and that's natural. And like we said before, maybe you've concentrated on other areas that you feel are more challenging. But still, this doubting, this kind of, is this the right word, or is this the right form, and when do I actually use the past tense versus the present perfect? Like, in what scenarios do I do that? And can I use this word also, like this verb I would use in this phrase in my own mother tongue? But is that something that we say in Swedish, or do we say something else? Maybe we have the same phrase, the same meaning, but we use a different verb in it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it does free up headspace when you don't have to constantly doubt yourself. And like you said, which I think is a very good point, there are some things where you have to have mastered the basics of verbs in order to progress, especially in B2. I think when you get to like perfect participles and things like that, then it's like, if you don't have the verb groups nailed down, then you're going to be standing on very uneven ground.
And I'm also thinking about one of my passion things in grammar, which is the S passive. So a lot of people learn about the S passive without knowing it when they first start. They say VCS, for example.
Yeah.
And no one is ever taught why we say VCS. They don't hear anything about it the first maybe 6 months. No one talks about it. It's just some secret that no one talks about. And knowing about the S passive is one of those key areas of verbs that you will be able to tackle much easier if you know the verbs to begin with.
Yes.
And then
you need to know the groups, and you need to know the patterns, and you also need to know the irregular ones off by heart.
And then connected to that, as if it was a spider's web, we have the transitive and intransitive verbs.
Yes. And we do
both,
have some in the bootcamp, actually. We do have some transitive.
we do. And both those things are things that you need to learn, because both of those things are super important in Swedish, whereas in English, S passive is a bit of a pariah. You're not supposed to use S passive in English, but in Swedish, it's perfectly normal to do that.
Absolutely fine. And you see S passive so much in the news, in kind of, I mean,
in anything, any text you read, you have S passive, and in any conversation you engage in, you will have S passive.
Yeah.
Even if you just say vi hörs or vi ses, vi träffas. And that is very, very important. It's a very key area that is connected to knowing the verbs. So yeah, that's kind of the spider's web I mentioned, where everything is kind of interlinked.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was going to say something and now I've completely forgotten what it was.
You have to write a script.
Was it something about the perfect participle? There was something else you said. Okay, so you talked about the S passive and the reciprocal S, but there was another thing you said. What was it you said?
I talk so much, I don't even remember what I said. I remember I put on coffee and I didn't bring it with me.
Oh no.
That's really silly of me.
That's fail. Ja. Ja. Det är spännande. Spännande med grammatik. Mm.
Ibland.
Ibland. Oftast, tycker jag.
Mm. Jo, men det är jättespännande.
Ja, det är superspännande. Det är så kul. Yeah. But one of the things that I like about the boot camp, about running the boot camp and having boot campers, is that you see, I mean, a lot of the time when we teach, and we might have students like, you know, private lessons, maybe we have people once a week or twice a week or something like that. You absolutely see progress, of course you do. But because you only see them maybe like 1 hour or 2 hours a week, sometimes more, sometimes less, it takes a while for that progress to happen. Whereas with a boot camp, because it's so intense, it's quite kind of, and you can see people making a leap, which I think is really exciting.
Yeah, and it's exciting also to see to feel the energy during the sessions. I've always liked that because I can sense kind of people are dreading it. At the same time, they're very excited about it.
They're like pumped.
Yeah. It's like doing a bungee jump in a tornado. You know, it's perfectly safe, kind of, but you never know where you're going to end up at the end, right?
No, that's right. And you're like, oh, this is going to be hard work. Like, am I really going to do this? Am I going to last? But
it's not like you and I disappear after we've had our session. It's like we're always kind of in the background making sure that everything is okay. So,
well, you know, we do check progress in Quizlet.
We do, exactly.
We can see what people are doing.
Yeah.
So no slacking. And then of course we're always available via email in between the sessions as well. And we send out information at least once a week, sometimes several times a week, and we answer questions and that kind of thing in between too. Exactly. So no, that's right. We're very involved. You will feel our presence throughout the boot camp.
Yeah. So we are kind of in the background pulling the strings. Yes,
that's right. Big Brother-esque.
With the puppet masters.
Yeah. Yes. So what's happening then? So we start. So this 4th boot camp starts. I realized I said different dates. I mean, it starts on the 14th of February. 14 februari började. Men the day before is quite a big day actually. So I've started to include that. That's like day 0. Dag 0. Because all the information is being sent out in the morning. And there's quite a lot of material to navigate through and watch a couple of instruction videos so you know exactly what to do, so you're ready to hit the ground running on the Monday of the first week. So day 0 is the 13th of February. And then the first boot camp day officially is the 14th. And then it goes on for 5 weeks. And we open for registration tomorrow. So from tomorrow you can buy it, you can book it, you can register if you're interested.
And that's the early bird, isn't it?
That's the early bird, yes. We do have a little early bird. If you register early, you can get it cheaper, which is nice. So early bird is until the 2nd, which I think is on Wednesday next week. Is that right?
Yes, I think so.
So we close for early birds 6 p.m. on Wednesday. Klockan 6 nästa onsdag. And then it's late birds, which are also very welcome. And we close the whole registration process the 7th of February, which will give us a bit of time to just get all the stuff ready for the kickoff on the 13th. And then we're off.
That sounds really exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm really excited. It is such a nice time to do this, I think. It is.
Yeah, it's a bit of a tradition now as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
We start off the year with a boot camp.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what else are people going to do?
Exactly.
Do something positive. Sort those verbs out. I mean, we could also maybe talk a little bit about that we are going to develop another boot camp.
Yes, we could do that.
We could just mention it. I don't feel like we can commit to any particular dates on this one because it's
a work in progress, I would say.
It's work in progress. But yeah, do you wanna introduce it?
Yeah, so we've been thinking about this idea for ages. And I think
people have requested, sorry to interrupt you, people have really asked us to do boot camps on our
they have. Especially last year, people were, at it for a long time. They were asking me every single time, when is it coming? When is it coming? And it's a particle verb boot camp. And you might say it's an extension of the verb, which it is. It is an extension because you use the verb and a preposition.
Usually, yeah.
And this is really, really important. I mean, the verb is important, but then you have like I said before, the spider's web, and you have a kind of connection to the particle verb, which is something you need in B2 at least.
Yeah, I think it starts kind of B1, B2. They start to
it does start in B1.
I mean, actually, most people learn one particular verb. I think we call them phrasal verbs in English.
We call them phrasal verbs, yeah.
Phrasal verbs. People learn, almost any beginner will learn the phrasal verb tycka om. That one comes in like A1 or A2 or something like that. But then after that, there's nothing. And then it hits you like a ton of bricks in B1, B2.
Yeah. And that is usually a wake-up call. And I realized that this is something that it's more important than you might think in Swedish.
Yeah.
Especially when even when you read, obviously, because sometimes you might read totally wrong or not understand what you're reading if you're not kind of including that particle with the verb. But even when you speak, sometimes if you pronounce wrong, it can get a different meaning. Completely. When you want to say something and you don't put the stress on the right word. Exactly. It changes the meaning.
Yeah.
And that is why phrasal verbs are one of those key areas I think that more advanced learners would need.
Yeah. When people ask me what's a phrasal verb and they don't know any Swedish, I always think, for some reason, I always think of the English phrasal verb throw up. Because I'm like, that's such a good example. I mean, there are loads of other examples, but it's like to throw something like a ball or a whatever, and then the direction up. But to throw up, that doesn't mean to throw something up in the air.
That's right.
It means to throw the insides of the leftovers of what you ate down the toilet or somewhere. You know,
Chicken curry.
so it's like, you know, it doesn't mean to throw like this at all.
Yeah.
And there are
It's a
so
really good
many of
example.
those in Swedish. We have so many phrasal verbs, and like you said as well, sometimes you have the same phrasal, you have the same verb and preposition, but if it's a phrasal verb, which means the stress is on the emphasis is on the preposition, then it means one thing. But then you can have the same two words, but if you stress the verb instead, it means something different.
Yeah.
Stöta and på being a very good example. Stöta på as a phrasal verb. Stöta på means to bump into someone unplanned. Like you bump, not physically bump into, but as in you meet someone that you hadn't planned
Unexpectedly.
Unexpectedly. But stöta på,
that can cause issues.
That could cause issues because that means to flirt with someone or to make
advances.
Maybe that's good. Yeah, so you definitely don't want to be saying to your Swedish partner, oh, jag stötte på din chef igår. Or jag stötte på din kompis igår. Because that's gonna cause a bit of friction. So you want to say jag stötte på din kompis igår. So that's the difference. Yeah. So the idea is that we are in the early stages of developing a partikelverb bootcamp.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. That's what we're kind of working on as well.
Yeah.
And that is kind of like an offshoot of the verb. So I wouldn't recommend doing a course like that if you haven't nailed down the verbs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that it's kind of like an expansion of the.
Yeah. Yeah, I would definitely say that would be for B1, B2 and up, with the additional comment that you need to know a bit about the verbs. So a little bit more advanced than the one that we're doing now because of that extra layer.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's the dog. Can you hear it?
Dog agrees with us.
Hey, Lola. Hon gick ut. Yeah. So that's going to be very interesting, but it's gonna the particle verbs bootcamp is going to have the same kind of methodology as this verb bootcamp that we're going to run now. It's going to have the same kind of
same format, sort of.
Yeah. Because we know, because this is a fourth bootcamp that we're now doing, we know that this works. We know that this is effective. We've had so much feedback and we've, tweaked it and we've developed it and we know it's effective. So then I feel quite confident that we can go on and apply the same method and the same format to a different area of Swedish grammar.
Yeah.
And it will work.
And it's like we said before, both the verbs and the phrasal verbs, they are integral parts of the language.
Yeah.
So
absolute.
Being just focused on these two things, or verbs first, then is it's good for your development.
Absolute. No. Oh my gosh, I can talk verbs till the cows come home. I really can. I'm just looking at my watch and it's 10 to 5. It's crazy. Yeah, so exciting. So yeah, what I will say is link is in our profile, Swedish Made Easy profile, for more information about the Verbs Bootcamp. Registration enrollment opens tomorrow. It's open until 7th of February. Early bird closes 2nd of February. The course starts really on the 13th of February, day 0. And when you go to our profile and click there on the link, you can also see some interesting stories of previous boot campers as well, like how they found it and what their experience as well, which I think could be quite useful for anyone who's
there's a lot of stories. They have a lot of things to say.
Yeah. Yeah, they do. And of course, also, if you have any specific questions, just drop a private message, just DM here on Instagram, or email as well, of course. Just go to our website and you've got our email address there. But yeah, available on DM here as well on Swedish Made Easy. Ja.
Okej.
Coolio.
Om du säger så.
Om du säger
det.
Om jag säger det. Ja, så säger jag. Kul. Jättekul. Men ska vi prata lite svenska innan vi
rundar av?
Vi kan runda av. Partikelverb.
Ja.
Runda av.
Just det.
Vi kan runda av lite. Precis. Så ja, jag kan ju bara säga det jag sa på engelska, kanske på svenska då. Så vårt bootcamp öppnar för registrering, anmälan imorgon via vår webbsida, och länk finns i vår profil, Swedish Made Easy profil. Öppet från och med imorgon. Det stänger den 7 februari. Och early bird, som jag inte vet, vad säger man på svenska?
Tidig fågel.
Jag tror inte det är en grej.
Nej.
Jag vet inte om det finns något. Men tidigt pris, billigare pris fram till den 2 februari. Nästa vecka, onsdag. Kursen börjar den 13. Och det är 5 intensiva veckor.
Och den 16 har vi första mötet, va?
Just det, precis. Och alla datum för våra live-sessioner finns också på webbsidan.
Ja, bra.
Jag har satt ut datum och tider så att all information finns där.
Perfekt.
Ja, jag tror inte vi har glömt någonting. Hoppas inte.
Nej,
i så fall får ni fråga.
Jag har glömt mitt kaffe bara.
Ja, du har glömt ditt kaffe. Just det. Ja, men om det bara är det så är det väl okej.
Det är okej.
Det är okej. Ja, men vi säger så. Vi rundar av helt enkelt.
Jättekul.
Superkul. Det ska bli så... Jag är så peppad för det här bootcampet.
Jag också.
Ja,
det blir
nu
jättekul.
jäklar. Nu kör vi. Okej. Men
tack för att ni ville titta på oss när vi sitter här och pratar.
Ja.
Jag har haft massa folk här som har hoppat in och ut under tiden.
Ja, väldigt spännande. Väldigt kul. Hoppas att vi har sagt något som har varit till nytta. Okej, men hörni allihopa, och du också Daniel, ha en trevlig kväll.
Tack så mycket, tack detsamma.
Och vi hörs säkerligen imorgon.
Vi hörs och ses.
Det gör vi.
Hej hej.
Hej då.